Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time I would like to talk about how there might just be a Donkey Kong Bananza specific Nintendo Direct to show just how deep this game actually goes. And we've been seeing a lot about this game to show how deep it's been going. There's really so much going on here. We keep seeing different hints with the lore, there seems to be a lot more to the gameplay. And recently, even more observations have been made about this game that are showing even more attention to detail, even more hints and references to prior Donkey Kong lore. But also we have a rumor that suggests that there's even more beyond that to this game, even with the gameplay itself. And when you consider all this and look at the circumstances in terms of how Nintendo's handling things as they approach the launch of Switch 2 and how they may be marketing their future games, including Donkey Kong Bananza, there might be enough reason to expect a Donkey Kong Bananza Direct that will show us just how deep this game actually goes, so that's what we're getting into today. But before going forward, let me take this moment to point out that I am aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers by the time the Switch 2 launches on June 5th, so you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. So let's start things off by pointing out just another little something I noticed that I find interesting that sort of is just another little detail on top of a big theory that we definitely full-heartedly believe at this point. And that's this screenshot here. As you can probably tell, Donkey Kong is being chased by this fierce-shaped crocoid. And looking at the eyes, the golden little orbs that appear like eyes at least, one is substantially larger than the other. Which then reminds me of Donkey Kong's most prominent rival throughout the series, King K. Rool. King K. Rool has one eye that is substantially larger than the other. So I then wonder, could this be a reference? And I think most likely it is a reference, and possibly more than a reference. Imagine if King K. Rool has returned in some way in this game, maybe not in his normal form, that is possible, perhaps he's been resurrected, but he also has developed some special powers, and perhaps he has some control over the crocoids. He can observe through the crocoids and these pieces of gold that look like eyes, and maybe that's why this particular one has eyes that look like King K. Rool, because King K. Rool is using this crocoid as a puppet to get at Donkey Kong. Might seem like a stretch, but at the very least, I do feel safe saying it is a reference. And I say that considering everything else we've talked about when it comes to King K. Rool being in this game. So we've already seen that all these different crocoids, which are all these different depictions of ancient looking rocks in the shape of crocodile heads, when you break them down, the insides of them are controlled by golden skeletal kremlins. Which might speak to the idea that perhaps King K. Rool has found a way back, but perhaps as an undead form or one with mystical powers, possibly. Regardless, it's clearly a Kremlin reference. But it goes way beyond that, because we've also seen that Ingot Isle, when it's taken down below the depths of the Donkey Kong world, the location looks a lot like the Lost World where we see Crocodile Core. And what's extra interesting about Crocodile Core is that we've seen this energy shooting up from it, this blue and pink energy, and there's actually been a lot we've seen throughout Donkey Kong Bananza that has these blue and pinks all throughout. There seems to be this energy that runs throughout the world, and a lot of the technology, including the minecarts. And actually we've even seen that there appear to be factories, very much where we saw a lot of the Kremlings in the Donkey Kong Country games, which also feels like a hard reference towards those games. And so this pink and blue energy seems to be an important resource in Bananza, as it appeared to be back in Donkey Kong Country 2. But the Kremlin references don't just end there, because it's also been observed that these different maps that Donkey Kong can collect actually detail different parts of the Northern Kremisphere, and perhaps other Donkey Kong locations, which again is more references towards the country games and the Kremlins. But also there is this emphasis on collecting different fossils. As we dig throughout, you can find different fossils, and we've seen one that represents a common Donkey Kong Country enemy, the Naughties. So there's clearly many references to prior Donkey Kong enemies. But we've also had a run-in with Cranky Kong. And we've seen a lot of dialogue from different playthroughs of the treehouse footage or the Switch to Experience events, and in different ways, Cranky Kong has alluded to Donkey Kong's rival, someone who has stolen the bananas, something that happened while Donkey Kong was away mining for different golden bananas, where VoidCo came in and stole those bananas, implying that something else happened back at home where the original hoard was stolen, which is what has brought Cranky Kong to here, and he continues to reference Donkey Kong's rival, this crook who has stolen these bananas, which is also definitely, very clearly, at least a very strong reference to King K. Rool, but he references him repeatedly, so it feels like more than just a subtle reference, but perhaps hinting at something deeper to the game. But going beyond King K. Rool and the Kremlins, there appear to be other references to other important things. Given that we've seen Cranky Kong, that then has us wondering, will there be other Kongs? We saw all these different monkeys in the mine, will there be more different types of Kongs? Where's Diddy Kong, who's almost always around for Donkey Kong adventures in some way? He hasn't been shown yet. Is he going to be in the game? I think it's likely considering we've seen all these different Kongs, but also this game clearly has not forgotten about the history of Donkey Kong, even the Rare-made Donkey Kong games. In fact, there are just as many references to the Rare-made Donkey Kong games as there is the original Donkey Kong game. If not more so, we see the barrels, the mine carts, Espresso, Rambi's referenced, and more. So I do think they are going to find ways to bring in other elements from Donkey Kong's history, and one of the most important characters in Donkey Kong history is Diddy Kong, so I do think Diddy Kong will play a role here. So there's even more for us to learn about when it comes to this game in terms of these different characters. But something else that has come up that's kind of mind-blowing, that further shows his great attention to detail in this game, are the ancient texts we see all throughout the world. So shoutouts to YouTuber Too Crispy who made this discovery. They put together a wonderful video, it will be linked in the description below, where they go throughout their entire journey of decoding all of these different ancient texts we've seen throughout Donkey Kong Bananza. It's extremely interesting, but basically what happens, Too Crispy was able to make the connection that these chips that Donkey Kong collects might have to do with a location, a chip exchange. He finds a building that likely says exchange, and from there, he's able to continually figure out more and more about the text, and it all fits and makes so much sense. Which again just further highlights just how deep it may go, both figuratively with the lore, but also literally with the gameplay, because this game is about progressing deeper and deeper into the world, which possibly is where Crocodile Core has sunk down to. But then there's this whole other layer that we've gotten really no information on, that is Pauline. So there was a leak from Nintendo of Korea where they briefly put up this key art for Donkey Kong, and instead of Oddrock being upon his shoulder, it was this young girl that looks like a young form of Pauline. Maybe it's Pauline herself or someone that's related to Pauline, like a cousin, daughter, something like that. It's possible. And we don't quite know exactly what's going on here, but it does seem like the implication is that as Donkey Kong progresses throughout the game, there will be changes. There will be story here. Which brings me to the Oddrock part of the equation. We've seen during the treehouse footage that there are some pretty touching moments between Donkey Kong and Oddrock. Oddrock seems to be terrified of Donkey Kong. There's some sort of trauma there, it appears. But Donkey Kong shows more emotional intelligence than perhaps he's ever shown before throughout the entire history, and starts singing to Oddrock to soothe this small character who might even be a young kid, because I think Oddrock might just be a transformed version of Pauline, which would make sense because Pauline, or Oddrock, is inexplicably scared of monkeys and Kongs, which might make sense if her first experience with them was that scary looking monkey from VoidCo, and they did something to her, which is why we see this Oddrock wrapped around with all this different VoidCo stuff. And we know original Pauline from Mario Odyssey is a singer, and Oddrock, oddly, is also a singer, and does seem to have more of a young kid-like demeanor. So I wouldn't be surprised as you progress and dive deeper and deeper into Bananza, there are developments to the story where Oddrock is eventually cured into this younger form of a Pauline. Especially because this younger looking version of Pauline has this bracelet that is made up of purple rocks that look very much like Oddrock. And even if I'm wrong with my theory here, the fact that we've seen this leak of this key art shows that there's going to be changes to the companion character for Donkey Kong, be it an entirely different person or a transformed version of Oddrock. But we've also seen that there are towns in this game where we see the ostriches, perhaps even a hotel, which shows this gameplay we see early on where we just smashed around through these rocks and stuff. There might be more, there may be a lot more interactions with characters and more lore building here as we continue to dive further and further into this game. There's just really seemingly a lot to it. And of course with the gameplay, we've seen Donkey Kong's platforming mechanics, his ability to climb and jump around, roll, and how it all seamlessly flows into each other, very much how Mario played in Mario Odyssey, which a lot of people theorize the Mario Odyssey team may have had a hand in this, which I do think they've at least had a hand in this. Do I think they've only been working on Donkey Kong Bananza over the last 7 to 8 years? No, but I do think there might be some relation. And so we have observed a lot of different things about Donkey Kong Bananza that show that there is clearly a lot more to learn about this game, but maybe you disagree, or maybe you might acknowledge that there could be a lot of references, but that doesn't mean from what we've seen in the gameplay it goes much beyond that. Well, we have an interesting rumor coming from Andre Segers of GameXplain.
And I have heard, from people who have had more experience in this game, that there is more to it, like non-public experience. And so I'm curious to know what that actually is.
So for the context, this is Andre Segers talking about his experience with the playable build of Donkey Kong Bananza, and he actually wasn't quite feeling the game. But what he does bring up from what he has heard from others who have played this game in non-public form, meaning anything that we have seen publicly, like from the trailer, the websites, the treehouse footage, the Switch to Experience events, press events, that is not what's being referenced here. Apparently, Andre Segers has spoken to some people who have played and experienced more of this game from what's been shown so far, and they're indicating to him that there is even more to this game for the gameplay. Andre is concerned that from what we've seen so far with the destruction, that there might not be that much more to it. I will point out he is optimistic that this game will be good, but he wasn't totally sold from what he's played so far. Point is, there is a rumor suggesting that there is even more to this game, which fuels the theories we have about Donkey Kong Bananza. And really, this should make sense. Donkey Kong Bananza is coming out in July, it's really not that far away, and we have learned a decent amount, but we also know that what we've seen so far is basically just the very beginning of the game. And I would say, very clearly, from everything I've brought up in this video, there's still so much more to learn about Donkey Kong Bananza. Which finally brings me to the point about there being a Donkey Kong Bananza game-specific Nintendo Direct. I think there's actually a really good chance this could be in the works. So in yesterday's video, I was talking about some different rumors and leaks for some different games that may be showing up in a Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, perhaps in late June. And I had noticed how we've already gotten 3 significant Nintendo Directs this year. The Switch 1 Direct at the end of March, the first big Switch 2 Direct a week later, and then a couple weeks after that, the Mario Kart World game-specific Direct. And so it got me wondering about how Nintendo's going to handle the rest of 2025. This is the beginning of their Switch 2 generation. They may be coming out with even more presentations than usual. And when I took a look at 2017, I noticed that there was actually also a greater amount of Nintendo Directs than usual, the launch year for Switch 1. And there were actually a handful of game-specific Directs. There was a Fire Emblem Direct, there was an Animal Crossing Mobile Direct, but also for Switch 2 games, there was an ARMS Direct, a Splatoon 2 Direct, and a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Direct. So between all of these different Directs, the big Switch 1 presentation in January, the big E3 Spotlight in June, the level of presentations in 2017 is far greater than any other year. And so with all this in mind, and look at what's going on with 2025 so far, we've gone 3 Directs in a short span of time, sure, but I think there's reason to expect still far more. And perhaps this also will include a handful of game-specific Directs. Games that would benefit by having a game-specific Direct, games that perhaps Nintendo wants to remind the world of this series, this IP about, that have a lot to show, that are very deep. Perhaps a game like Donkey Kong Bananza. When you consider about the lineup we know so far for this year, there aren't many other games beyond Mario Kart World or Donkey Kong Bananza that would make sense to have their own game-specific Direct. Maybe Metroid Prime 4. Maybe there's another game that Nintendo will announce later this year that also may need a Direct. But if we follow the framework of 2017, how there were 3 game-specific directs for Switch 1 titles, assuming we get 3 this year, which isn't guaranteed, it could be less, but it could also be more. Might I remind you, there was still a Fire Emblem and Animal Crossing direct as well, they just weren't for Switch 1 titles. It seems like with Donkey Kong Bonanza being one of the few totally brand new big games coming out this year, there's a very solid chance there could be a game-specific direct about this game. Now, timing-wise, when might it happen? Well, I was taking a look at how Nintendo handled the ARMS and Splatoon 2 directs. The ARMS direct came out on May 17th, 2017, but ARMS did not release until a month later, June 16th. However, Splatoon 2 actually released about a month after ARMS, July 21st. And that Splatoon 2 direct actually was only a couple weeks before this release, July 6th. So we look at how we just got the Mario Kart World Direct. It actually happened very quickly after the Switch 2 Direct, and with more than a month in advance before Mario Kart World and the Switch 2 come out. That's a longer gap than usual. I think there are actually a few opportunities for where we could see a Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct. Perhaps we get it in this gap of time, but as we wait for the Switch 2 and the launch of Mario Kart World, that's a possibility just to give us more to be excited about. But also, maybe it happens a little bit after this expected June Direct. And I'm expecting a June Direct to happen after Summer Games Fest in June, so in the 3rd or 4th week of June, which still leaves a few weeks of time before the release of Bonanza. Bonanza releases on July 17th, so perhaps a couple weeks before then, early July, very similar to that Splatoon 2 Direct, we get the Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct, which would be one more big push for Bonanza after probably giving it another push in this theorized and expected next big Switch 2 Direct. And obviously, there are some things that should just remain a secret until we play Bonanza. But there's also still a lot more they need to show about this game, because there are people that see Bonanza so far and are concerned that it is just what's been shown so far, that it's just breaking around a whole bunch of stuff and there isn't anything more sophisticated to it. Now, personally, from everything I've seen, I'm very excited for Bonanza. I think the gameplay is going to be great, but just because I'm sold on it doesn't mean many others also are. So they still need to show more, and I don't think just one more trailer from a June Direct is going to cut it. There may really need to be a whole-on Bonanza Direct to really show people what this game is all about, while still keeping some secrets under wraps. Maybe they don't reveal King K. Rool before the game comes out, but we do get a few more hints and we're really thinking it, and then when we finally see him at the end of the game, we're gonna have this amazing payoff. But maybe by June or early July, we at least see that Diddy Kong is going to be in the game some way. Might he be related to the gameplay? Or Rambi, who we've seen an icon for, which I think implies he will be related to the gameplay in some way. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.